Hello guys, I'm Orbital and welcome to my tutorial series of basic rocketry to more advanced. And still we're on the basics because this time we're going to go through orbital maneuvers. And first off, what I should do is get the Kerbal X. Let's go launch it into a normal orbit. So let's again through the launching, the gravity turn as it's called. So, launch. Okay, what you want to do straight away as you launch, turn right, use the nav ball, make sure in the center prograde that purple, that yellow marker, not purple marker, on the nav ball, and turn it over slowly as you're going up. Once you get rid of all those stages, you can go to map view while still turning it over, by the way. When you get to about 45 degrees, you can stop turning it over. Now all you have to do is wait until your apoapsis gets to 100 kilometers, create the maneuver node to get a circularized orbit, follow that maneuver node, and don't forget, for every maneuver node, you need to burn half the estimated time before and half the estimated time after the node itself. So we're almost a minute there, so we went about 30 seconds, under 30 seconds. Burn before and after. Don't forget you can adjust your throttle as well to change how quickly you do that burn. But if you're not used to doing that, just go full thrust. Anyway, let's get into the meat of this tutorial. Now we're in orbit, we can talk about orbital maneuvers. And that's circularized enough for me. You don't have to be perfect with the orbits. Now what you notice by this orbit, it's at an angle. That is at a purpose. Because say like you want to go to the man, you need to get in the same inclination as the man. Or just if you want to get into orbit, a proper circular orbit, you can get into a nice flat orbit by just using this technique. Now you can target the man, and when you do, you get the ascending and descending nodes. And you see it says degrees, that's the degrees that you are out on that orbit. So what you can do is create a maneuver node and use the purple markers. You might get the wrong one first, but generally it's 50-50. But once you choose the right one, wait until the ascending markers get close to 0. 0.1 is pretty good, that's very close. That'll do for what we need to do. It'll show you what you have to do to adjust your inclination. And you can see it's going to take 230 meters per second to change that. Oh, and by the way, say like by here, the picture's quite dark in space. And if you want to know what you're doing, you can increase the ambient light, so like map or the editor, or just ambient light in general. So let's do that. And you can see it's brighten up the picture. Makes it easier for you guys to see my videos, especially during night time. Anyway, let's go ahead, burn at this node, and you can see the orbit line. It's flattening out. It's doing what we wanted to do. Obviously, as you get close to the end of the maneuver, slow down your thrust and just do little bursts until you get really close. Right, that's perfect. We have done that successfully. But however, what if you need to do a large change in your orbit inclination? Inclination, by the way, is just orbit angle. So let's do a ridiculous angle. Now look at this. 1,436 meters per second, and it's raised the orbit. We don't want to raise the orbit, we want to be in the same orbit height, just different inclination. So you're going to have to do change your inclination and reduce your orbit height in one maneuver. Look how much that costs you, 1,525 meters per second. And for some rockets, that is more than you have. Okay, so how do we handle this? Well, an easy way is, say like you want to launch towards Minmus. Its orbit is a higher inclination than the man. So what you're going to do is target Minmus first. Then, a little trick is focus on Kerbal, the planet, double click on it, and then line up the orbit of the man so it's flat. Now what you want to do is use the arrow right and left keys, just shimmy that across until you see the orbit of Minmus intersect the center of Kerbal. Now you can zoom out here and check to see if the orbit of Minmus is flat. That's pretty good. So rough. This is more of a rough guesstimation, and that is when you want to use time accelerate while you're on the launch pad until the launch pad itself, the rocket, as you can see on the map view of Kerbal, is right under the center of Kerbal as we have lined up all the orbits. Let's do it by there. You want to be a little bit before, and then what you want to do is launch at this angle of that. Now, north is down on the navel. Remember that. South is up, north is down. But you also want to go east. So we have to go northeast, which is down slightly, but right more than down. If you get that. So that's the angle we want to go at. But, however, it is the same thing launching a rocket, turning sideways. And what you can do, if you guess the angle, you can rotate your craft so that you can still just go right, as I did by here. And once you get rid of stages, go to map view, check the orbit height. And this time you want to use the ascending nodes. You might have to go up or down a bit. This may be a bit more advanced. If you're not used to just get into orbit at the angle that you've created to 100 kilometers. Then circularize your orbit. And when you do your circularize orbit, you can use the up and down motions, the purple markers, to change the ascending or descending node or the angle of your orbit. However, I didn't have much availability to change that here, so I'll do the best I can, get into orbit. The good thing with this is that you only have to do a small inclination change to change your orbit inclination this time. Now I should have done a before and after this, what it was like to change your orbit inclination, and then do the launch and change your inclination. But there you can see 60 meters per second change the orbit inclination here compared to the 230 when we tried to get into the same plane as the orbit of the man. Now let's get into something a bit more interesting, shall we? Yes, let's go into something called the Hohmann transfer. I also used to call it the Hohmann, but it's actually Hohmann transfer. And what this is a set of maneuvers that you can change. I'm using this satellite as an example. Let's say we want to get to the same orbit as this satellite. What you want to do is first off create a maneuver node, get the orbit height, the apoapsis up to the height of the orbit of the satellite, and then burn that. And if you wonder what I'm doing by here, I just burned slightly. And what it is that sometimes the estimated burn does not calculate the exact burn time because Kerbal messes up now and again. I'll go into mods that can handle that in the future. But first off, let's do everything stock as possible. Right, now that we've got the apoapsis height, what you want to do is accelerate or create a maneuver on the apoapsis and create your orbit circular. This is almost a bit like launch, isn't it? Get your apoapsis up to your height that you want, and then create a maneuver node to get into circular orbit. Well, yes, it basically is it, except that you're also like starting from a standing still, launching from the launch pad. Okay, and once you've done this maneuver, that's it. That's the Hohmann transfer. Change your orbit height, and it's basically what you actually do when you intercept moons or other objects, like the satellite. We could use that to get to the satellite. But now let's do this same principle or similar principle to get to the man. Yes, let's do a flyby of the man. Not just any old flyby, a return flyby. So first off, let's add a maneuver node. Normally I like to make it on the opposite side of where the man is. Get the height to roughly where the man is and rotate or move the maneuver node until we get the man encounter. Now we need to adjust it so we pass in front of the man. Like that. So we go on a bit further. And then when I adjust the prograde and retrograde, you may have to fiddle with the maneuver node here, but you can see here that we do have a free return trajectory of passing the man and then returning back to Kerbal without having to do any extra burns around the man. Or being flung out of the Kerbal system and being lost in deep space. No, you don't want to do that, do you? No, so let's go ahead and burn this node, and you do note I was a bit late doing this burn, but that's okay. If you're a little bit late, you can do the burn again. If you're a lot late, what you can do is add +1 on the orbit and just adjust where your maneuver node is so you get the same intercept. Okay, I'm going to burn this gently. As long as we have the free return towards Kerbal and we're not crashing into the surface of the man, yeah, but you do make sure you don't crash into the surface of the man, then you'll be fine. So let's quickly time accelerate, leave Kerbal behind as we go on our epic voyage towards the man and back. This is the first time Kerbal has passed over the surface, looking at the dark side of the man. Although the dark side of the man is pointing at Kerbal for some reason at this time, so we're past on the light side of the man. Anyway, now we get the free trajectory return. Now we've got a heat shield on this, so before we hit the 70 km marker, let's go ahead, make sure that the rocket's pointing retrograde, hit the staging so that the rocket doesn't explode. Because what would happen is you'd enter the atmosphere, the rocket would explode, causing your capsule to explode. But this way, now that we've got the heat shield pointing the atmosphere, that'll take the brunt of the atmosphere. Now do note, straight from the man, this is going to be a really fast return. And if you're going even faster than I am by here, sometimes the heat shield can overheat, causing it to explode into a million Kerbal pieces. However, we do survive. And then open the chute when it's safe to do so, and you've returned. That was a nice easy mission, actually. And if you're playing Kree mode, you could use that as a way of getting science from the man. But let's think a little harder, and I think this time we'll actually land on this one. So let's go ahead and go to Minmus. And I've chosen this target for a good reason. Minmus is very small, so it is lower gravity and is easier to land on. But first thing, I've used the orbit that we used to get into the man. So we need to adjust our inclination. Yes, it's going to take a little extra delta V, and it would save a lot more fuel if we launch into that orbit. But I'm just showing you for the sakes of this tutorial that this is what you would do. Okay, now we've got the inclination. Let's create a maneuver node. Again, opposite side of the moon. Or Minmus in our case. And you see I mistakenly got a height to the orbit of the man this time. No, we want to go to Minmus. Again, rotate the orbit, the maneuver node, until you get the intercept to the Minmus. Right, by here, I decided to reduce the apoapsis height, and this is to save that little bit of fuel, because sometimes you need that fuel to get back into orbit and then return to Kerbal. However, now that we've done that, we can focus in on Minmus, and then with the same maneuver node, hover over the prograde vector and use your little mouse wheel. Little turns, mind you. If you do it too quickly, get too close to the moon and you don't want to crash into the surface. Also, when you change the sphere of influence from a planet to moon or a planet from the sun and that, sometimes it can go a bit chaotic. Sometimes the game messes up and your orbit height or your apoapsis can be different. You can either crash into the moon or you can be really higher than you thought. But talking about sphere of influence, I do have to note that smaller bodies, like Minmus, has a smaller sphere of influence, so you do need to get a bit closer to the moon before you get a gravitational grab of the moon or sphere of influence change. However, the man is much bigger, so its gravity influence is much larger, therefore it's easier to get an encounter with the man. Okay, I'm getting closer, now doing a small burn. And we have our encounter. It's not exactly what we wanted, but it's going to get us there. So let's go ahead, fast forward time, and they get into orbit around a different alien moon. Now, if you have not been to Minmus before, and you want to save this for yourself, click off here now, because you will see it right here. And you've probably seen it on the internet before anyway. Okay, those of you who kept on watching, now what you can do is add a maneuver after you've changed the sphere of influence and get yourselves in a circularized orbit. That's all you need to do is create a maneuver node, retrograde, and burn that node pointing retrograde. You can do this manually, and one day you probably will be doing this manually, because sometimes create maneuver nodes can be a pain in the ass. However, they are handy guides for even the expert. I'm pointing in the wrong direction. I should be pointing this direction when you're accidentally pointing the wrong direction because you haven't created a node. So they are handy guides. Right, now we're in orbit. Let's go ahead and prepare to land. But at the moment, we're a bit high. If we fall from this height, we'll be coming in quite fast, even though Minmus has a low gravity. So what I suggest you do is adjust your orbit. By here, I decided 22 kilometers. Minmus gravity is really low. That's pretty good. And then we'll go down to the periapsis. And you can warp time automatically by left-clicking on the orbit line and clicking on warp here, but be careful with that feature. A couple of times I've accidentally clicked it and warped past my maneuver nodes, so do be careful. Anyway, now that we're here, I'm going to point retrograde again. This time, let's do it without a maneuver. See, I'm slowly burning. There's not even that much thrust by here. And we're almost circular. A little bit more. The time you know when you're circular is when the periapsis and the apoapsis markers about swap points, but halfway. That's when you know you're virtually in a circular orbit. Right, landing spots on this moon. Now you want to choose the flattest areas, and they are quite handy because they are at sea level. And when you look at the height indicator, that's at sea level. Right, let's create a maneuver node. Let's land on these larger flats, I think they're called. Or greater flats, perhaps. What's they called? Now let's time warp to this maneuver node. Now look at what happens here. This is handy to note. If I had burnt this, then we would have gone into that mounting on the side. We don't want that, so what you can do is you can create a maneuver node, time warp to it, and then once you're sure that it's in the wrong place, move the maneuver node until it's over the landing spot you want to. I've moved it over a bit to make sure that we do land on the flats. And again, just time warp. And hey presto, let's burn. Now I'm using that maneuver node as a guide, so I don't care about the timings. As long as we get close to that maneuver node, then we're good. We're dropping down. Let's extend the gear. Now put your seats in the upright position and put your trays down in its fold position or up position. I can't remember what they say. Anyway, get ready to land. Right, first off, what I'm going to do here is time warp until we're about 10 kilometers, just under. Make sure you're pointing retrograde and make sure the nav ball is mentioned surface on it, because you want the surface speed. We're not in orbit anymore, because we want her on surface because we're battling the speed, the rotation of the moon as well. So you have to make sure you're at the same rotation as the moon as you're coming down. And what we're doing is falling slowly down. Check the position of the sun as I did here. And you can see we got a shadow. That will help you land. So bear that in mind. Now we're coming down to 2.5 kilometers. Burnt a bit, just under 10 meters per second speed now. This is really, really slow. I've sped this video up a bit, so you're not bored watching this. But do bear in mind, on this moon, you will have a lot of time falling, but this does give you a good idea, and it is a lot easier than landing on the man. And what you just saw me doing, and keep on burning until the speed is just under 10 meters per second. And this is to make sure that we're not going to go too fast. Also, what this does, because we're pointing retrograde, is cancel out our sideways movement. And since we're coming down a bit more straighter angle, it's going to be easiest for us to land rather than flip over because we're going sideways slightly. Now that we're just 200 meters up and doing small burns here, I've reduced the thrust of the main engine. You see it doing a bit more. This makes it a little easier to control because what you want to do, you don't want to hit the surface any faster than 7 meters per second. I think those landing legs are rated 7 meters per second. But there you go, 5 meters per second, and we still bounced. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You have landed first on the moon Minmus, because it is easier to do so. Now let's get Jebediah out. Bill, just jump. Just jump at the... It's really low gravity, you don't have to worry about falling. I'm gonna crawl down here, says Bob. Better to be safe than sorry. Anyway, by here I decided, what if these Kerbals done a Mexican wave? Because the gravity of Minmus is so low, Kerbals jump really high. Sort of like Superman or Spider-Man jumping high. So let's go ahead. 1 Kerbal, 2 Kerbals, 3 Kerbals, and hey presto! That worked rather well. Anyway guys, next tutorial I decided we're going to show you how to build and land a rocket on the moon. So look forward to that. And anyway, I'm Orbital, trust me, I'm an engineer.